Cold wind blew through the open market square. Snowflakes danced in the air as people shouted prices, sold goods, and bargained loudly. But in the middle of it all stood a platform, high and wooden, used not for fruit or tools, but for people, Andi. That stage stood a woman, an alien, tall, heavy. Her skin was pale green with silver markings. Her hands were tied, her clothes were torn, and her eyes, though proud, were tired. She had been standing there for hours. "She's too big." Someone from the crowd laughed. "Who wants that?" Another voice jeered. "She'll break the floor." Laughter. Cruel, sharp laughter echoed all around her. The auctioneer, a thin alien man with long fingers and sharp teeth, tried to keep his energy up. He hit his cane on the stage and shouted, "Come on now, strong, healthy, excellent for labor." No one raised a hand. "She's ugly, she's useless, not even worth one credit." The woman said nothing. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just stood there, eyes locked on the horizon. Her chest rose and fell slowly, like she had already accepted her fate. The auctioneer tried again. 10 credits. Silence. 5? More silence. "Fine. 1 credit. Anyone?" The crowd stayed quiet. Some turned away. Others smirked. One child pointed and laughed at her wide shoulders. But then, through the snow and crowd, a new voice spoke. "I'll take her." The crowd turned. It was a human. A man. Bearded. Wearing a thick brown coat with fur on the collar. His face was calm but serious. His boots crunched in the snow as he stepped forward, holding up 1 single credit in his gloved hand. Auctioneer blinked. "You want her?" "Yes," the man said. "Let her down." People stared. Some chuckled. "Maybe he's crazy," someone whispered. "Maybe he needs someone that big to carry his house," joked another. But the man didn't respond to the laughs. He walked to the stage and stood in front of the alien woman. She looked down at him, confused. Was this a new owner? Another cruel master? Another person who would lock her in a cage and beat her if she failed? He pulled out a small knife, not to hurt her, but to cut her ropes. Slowly, carefully, he freed her wrists. Her arms fell to her sides, weak from hours of stillness. She rubbed her wrists and looked into his eyes. They were warm, not soft, but kind. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice low and rough. "To give you a place to rest," he said simply, her eyebrows furrowed. She didn't understand. Nobody had ever wanted her to rest. "Do you own me now?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, I don't believe in owning people." "Then why did you pay for me?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at the snow-covered market, then back at her, because no one else did. He turned and started walking away, but paused and looked back. "Are you coming?" She stared at him for a moment. The crowd was still watching, still whispering. If she stayed, the auctioneer might chain her up again. If she followed this man, who knows what would happen. But something deep in her chest whispered, "Go." And so, she stepped off the stage, slowly, like a mountain learning to walk again. The man handed her his coat. She didn't take it at first, but then she did. It was warm. They walked through the snow together, leaving behind the market, the laughter, and the chains. Behind them, someone muttered, "She'll be back. No one wants something that size." But they were wrong, because one man did. Snow fell quietly as they walked. The alien woman followed the human man through narrow streets, still confused, still silent. Her large footsteps made deep prints in the snow. The coat he gave her barely covered her wide frame, but it was warm, and that alone made her feel strange. No one had given her warmth before. They reached a small wooden house at the edge of the village. It was plain, old, but light shined warmly through its windows. The man opened the door and motioned for her to enter. She paused at the doorway. "Go on," he said gently. Inside, it smelled of cooked food, burning wood and something soft, like comfort. She stepped in, careful not to break anything. Her large frame filled the small hallway. She expected a cage, or chains, or a cold floor to sleep on. Instead, she saw a chair, a blanket, a fireplace. "Sit," he said. "I'll make tea." She sat slowly on the floor instead, nervous she would break the chair. Her heart beat fast, her hands trembled. She didn't understand this kindness. It felt dangerous, like a trap. He brought a steaming cup and placed it near her. "I'm Kyle," he said. She looked at the cup, then at him. "You don't want my name," she whispered. "No one ever does." Kyle smiled a little. "Then I'll wait until you're ready to share it." She blinked. Was this man real? They sat in silence for a while. The fire cracked softly. Her hands wrapped around the cup, the heat soaking into her fingers like a forgotten memory. "Why? Did you buy me?" she finally asked. "I didn't buy you," Kale said. "I rescued you from them." "Then what am I to you?" He looked at her seriously. "You're a guest. You can rest here. Stay as long as you want." That answer shook her more than any chain ever had. She had been sold and bought before, used, hurt, called a monster because of her size. Her arms were strong, her back wide, and her body never fit anywhere. No one ever saw her as anything more than a tool or a joke. But this man, he saw her. Just her. "I can't pay you back," she whispered. "I can't cook. I break chairs. You don't owe me anything," he said firmly. She stared into the fire. His kindness made her chest ache. That night, Kale made a simple stew. The smell made her stomach twist. She hadn't eaten properly in days. When he gave her a bowl, her hands shook. She dropped the spoon. The stew spilled a little. "I'm sorry," she gasped, panicked. Kale just got a cloth and wiped the table, then handed her the spoon again. No harm done. Tears filled her eyes. She didn't cry when she was beaten. She didn't cry when no one wanted her. But now, in this quiet house with one kind word, she couldn't stop the tears. She turned her face away, ashamed. Kale didn't push her. He just sat quietly, eating his stew. She didn't know it yet, but this silence was her first taste of peace. Later, Kyle showed her a small bed in the guest room. She looked at it. "I won't fit." Kyle shrugged. "Try." She did. It creaked, loudly but didn't break. He smiled. "See? Strong like you." She blinked at him. "Why are you like this?" she asked softly. "You treat me like a person." "Because you are." She didn't know what to say. That night she lay in bed staring at the wooden ceiling. Her huge body curled into itself. The blanket was warm, the room quiet. But her heart was loud. Was he lying? Was this just a trick, or was this the first home she ever had? For the first time in many years she fell asleep without fear. The next morning she woke early, before the sun. The house was still, warm from the fading embers in the fireplace. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then she remembered the bed, the blanket, the kindness, and it frightened her. She sat, up slowly, her large arms heavy like stone. She had never been allowed to sleep in a bed before, not without being punished for it. She stood and looked around. Nothing was locked. No cameras watched her. No master yelled orders. But her mind whispered, "This won't last." She walked to the kitchen and found Kale already awake, holding a mug of hot drink, staring out the frosty window. "You didn't have to wake up early," he said, not turning around. "I don't want to be useless," she said quickly. "I can clean. I can move heavy things. Just don't throw me out." Kyle turned and looked at her. "I won't throw you out. You don't have to prove anything. But I'm too much," she said. "Too big, too strong. I always ruin things." Kyle walked over and placed the mug down. "Then maybe the world built things too small." She looked at him with wide eyes. No one had ever said something like that. Most people just told her to lose weight, to hide, to be quiet. She couldn't do any of those things. She had always taken up space, whether she wanted to or not. Later that day, she tried to help around the house. She picked up a wooden chair to move it. Crack. The leg snapped. "I'm sorry," she gasped, frozen. Cale simply picked up the broken piece. "Old chair anyway, I'll fix it." She tried again, sweeping the floor, but the broom was too short for her reach. Her long arms knocked over a face crash. She covered her mouth, heart pounding. Cale peeked in, then nodded. "We didn't need that one." He didn't shout, didn't hit her, didn't even sigh, but her guilt only grew heavier. "I ruin everything," she said quietly. "You're not the problem," Cale replied. But she didn't believe him. That night she sat near the fire with her knees to her chest. Her large frame seemed to shrink under her sadness. Kyle sat in the chair nearby, repairing the broken chair leg with strong glue and nails. "Why are you fixing things I broke?" she asked. "Because you tried to help," he said. "That matters." She stared into the flames. "I've been in many places," she said softly, "sold again and again. Some tried to make me fight. Others made me carry things until my back gave out. I wasn't allowed to speak. They said my voice was too loud, my body too big, my heart too soft." Cale listened quietly. "I thought I had no worth," she continued, "until you offered one credit." Kyle looked at her, eyes soft. "I didn't buy you because I pitied you," he said. "I bought you because no one else saw your value, I did." "But why?" He thought for a moment, then answered. "You didn't break on that stage. You didn't cry. You stood tall, even when the world laughed. That's strength most don't have." She was quiet. Her heart beat faster. She didn't know how to live in a world where people saw her this way. That night, as the fire dimmed and the room grew dark, Cale placed a thick blanket over her shoulders. She looked up, eyes shining. "You remind me of a mountain," he said. She tilted her head, confused. "Big, strong, unshakable, and beautiful, if someone takes the time to really look." She turned her face away, hiding the tears rolling down her cheek. But Cale didn't need to see them. He just stayed near, letting her cry quietly, letting her heart begin to heal. Word spread quickly in the small village. People whispered behind. Closed windows, they pointed from across the market. Their eyes narrowed when Cale walked by. He brought her home. That giant creature? She'll crush him in his sleep. The alien woman heard it all. Even when they whispered, their stares were loud, sharp, heavy. Cale noticed too, but he didn't seem to care. He still greeted people with a nod, still bought vegetables, still returned home with calm steps, but she cared. Every time they whispered about her, it added another stone to the weight in her chest. One afternoon, she went to the well outside the village. She wanted to carry water back before Cale returned, from work. Maybe if she helped more, people would stop looking at her like she was a monster. As she filled the wooden bucket, 2 village women walked by. They stopped talking when they saw her, then started again, louder. "She's using our water now? Didn't think she could even fit in a house. I bet he's keeping her like a pet." Her hands trembled on the handle. She lifted the heavy bucket, one in each hand, and began walking back. Her steps were slow, her eyes low. Kyle was waiting at the door when she arrived. He took one bucket from her and smiled. "I told you not to carry things alone," he said. She didn't answer. He noticed the way she avoided his gaze. "What happened?" "Nothing," she lied. But her silence said everything. That night, she sat outside on the porch alone. The stars were out, but she didn't feel their light. Her arms wrapped around her knees. She felt large, awkward, out of place. Kyle stepped out quietly and sat beside her. "Cold?" he asked. She shook her head. "They don't want me here," she said. "They think I'm a beast, that I don't belong." Kyle looked at the sky. They're scared of what they don't understand. But what if they're right? She whispered. Maybe I don't belong. Kyle turned to her, his voice calm but firm. This house is mine. And I say you belong. She looked at him. For a moment, she wanted to believe. But fear had deep roots. The next day, trouble came. A group of young village men stood outside Cale's home when he returned from town. The alien woman peeked from the window and saw them. One kicked the front steps, another shouted, "We don't want her here!" Cale stepped forward. "She hasn't hurt anyone," he said. "She doesn't belong," one man replied. "You're putting the village at risk." "And from what?" Cale asked. "A kind woman who cooks, cleans, and minds her own business." "She's not normal," another snapped. "Look at her size." Cale's voice grew cold. "Her size saved me from a cave-in once." "Would you rather she wasn't there?" The men didn't answer. "She's not a danger," Kyle continued. "But your hate is." The group muttered and left, but not quietly. They spat on the ground as they walked off. Kyle stepped inside and found her sitting in the corner, arms hugging. "Her knees, you heard?" he asked. She nodded. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be," he replied. "I'm making your life harder." "You're making it better." She looked at him, truly looked. "Why do you keep fighting for me?" He paused, then answered, "Because someone should have done it long ago." That night she stood in front of the mirror. She looked at her. Wide shoulders, her thick arms, her strong legs. For years she had hated what she saw. But Cale, he never looked at her with disgust. Only respect, kindness, even admiration. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't meant to shrink to fit their world. Maybe, she was born to stand tall. The sky turned red. A strange low rumble shook the ground beneath the village. Windows rattled. Birds fled into the clouds. Then, boom, a terrible crash came from the eastern ridge where the old mines were. Black smoke began to rise, thick and heavy, turning the sky dark. The village bell rang. Loud, urgent. People screamed. Some ran. Others gathered in fear. The mine collapsed. A voice yelled, "People are trapped." The support beams gave. Out! Cale was already gone. He had been working inside that mine. She stood frozen in the doorway. Her heart thudded in her chest like thunder. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. From rage. Rage at the helplessness. Rage at the world that always broke things. People, lives, hearts. And expected her to stay silent. Not this time. Without a word, she ran. The path to the mine was steep and slippery with snow. The ground cracked beneath her heavy steps, but she didn't stop. Her breath came in sharp gasps. Her large body moved like a force of nature, one that could no longer be ignored. When she reached the broken mine entrance, the villagers were standing outside, panicking. "No one can get in. It's too dangerous. Too many rocks, too heavy." She looked at the mess, twisted metal, crushed wood, and boulders blocking the way, and then she stepped forward. A man grabbed her arm. "No, you'll get hurt." She shook him off. Her voice came out like fire. "He's in there. No more fear. No more shame. Just purpose." She dropped to her knees and began lifting. Her thick arms strained, but they didn't break. Her broad back heaved, but it didn't fall. She lifted boulders that 10 men couldn't move. Pulled broken beams like they were branches. Gasps echoed behind her. "I didn't know she was that strong." "She's like a machine." "No, she's saving them." Dust filled the air. Her fingers bled, her legs burned, but she didn't stop. And then, a voice. Weak. Muffled. "Help. Cale." She roared like a storm and tore through the final blockage. There he was, trapped under a beam, coughing, his eyes barely open. She rushed forward, gripped the beam with both hands, and lifted with a cry of pain and strength combined. The villagers behind her saw something unforgettable. A giant woman, dirty, bleeding, covered in ash, lifting death itself off the man who saved her. She dragged him out, wrapped him in her arms, and carried him like he weighed nothing. Back at the village, healers rushed in. Cale was alive, bruised but breathing. She sat by his side, still dirty, still shaking, Her clothes were torn, her hands swollen. But she didn't care. He opened his eyes and looked up at her. "You came," he whispered. She nodded slowly. "You gave me a home. I couldn't lose it." "No," Kyle smiled weakly. "I gave you a home because you are one." The next day, the village was different. People didn't whisper anymore. They spoke openly, with wonder. She saved them. She saved all of them. I used to think she was too big. Now I think we were too small. Children came with flowers. Adults brought food. Even the ones who once mocked her now stood quietly near, unsure how to apologize. She didn't say much. But when one small child hugged her leg and said, "Thank you for being strong," she smiled. A real smile. That night, she stood by the fireplace. Again. Kale sat nearby, still healing. She looked at her hands, now bandaged, and said softly, "You said I was like a mountain." Kale looked up. "I remember. I didn't believe you. Until now." She sat beside him. "I spent my life thinking my body was a curse, that I was too much. But maybe I was made this way, for moments like that." Kyle nodded. "Your size didn't save me. You did." She looked at him with wide, shining eyes. And, for the first time, she didn't feel like too much. She felt just right. Snow still blanketed the village, but something had changed. Where there was once fear, now there was curiosity. Where there was silence, now there were voices. Soft, careful, but different. The alien woman no longer walked with her head down. She walked tall. Her scars were still there, on her arms, her back, her heart. But now, so was something new. Respect. Villagers watched as she helped repair the collapsed mine. Not because she was forced, but because she wanted to. Her large hands moved carefully. She lifted wood, carried heavy tools, and helped others without asking for anything in return. Children watched from the snowbanks. "She's strong like the stories," one boy whispered. "She's not scary," another added. "She's kind." Some of the villagers started greeting her. Short nods, a smile, a thank you, here and there. And though she wasn't used to kindness, she accepted it. At home, Kale was healing slowly. His ribs still hurt. His leg was bruised. But he smiled more now. One afternoon, she brought him warm soup and placed it beside him. He looked at her and chuckled. "You didn't spill this time." She grinned shyly. "I used a bigger bowl." Kyle nodded. "Smart." She sat down across from him, warming her hands near the fire. There was a quiet between them, but not empty. A soft, peaceful quiet. "I've been thinking," he said after a while. "About what?" she asked. "About building you a new chair. One that doesn't break." She raised an eyebrow. "A chair for giants?" Kale smiled. "No, a chair for you." Her chest tightened at his words, not because they hurt, but because they healed. No one had ever adjusted the world for her. She had always been told to shrink, to hide, to be less. But Kale made space for her. A few days later, she stepped outside and found something strange. In the yard, a frame big, wooden, thick. Kale was building something. He wiped his brow and looked up. "Help me?" he asked. Together, they lifted and hammered and shaped wood. She didn't need to hide her strength, she used it. And Kale let her lead. When it was done, she saw what it was. A chair. Huge, wide, comfortable, made for her shape, her size. She stared at it, stunned. "I've never had something that fit me," she whispered. Kale looked at her with soft eyes. "Then this is the first of many things." The chair became her spot. She sat there each evening, wrapped in a thick blanket, sipping warm drinks, watching the snow fall. One day, a little girl from the village ran up and handed her a flower. "It's for the strong lady," the child said. She held the flower carefully in her large hand, unsure what to say. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, As she sat in her chair, Cale brought something small. A bundle wrapped in cloth. He placed it on her lap. "What's this?" she asked. "Clothes," he said. "New ones. Made for you." She unfolded the fabric. It was strong material, soft but sturdy, stitched wide and long. It was beautiful because it was made for her, not stolen, not forced. Hers. "I don't know what to say," she said. "You don't have to say anything," Kyle replied. But she did say something. She stood, walked over, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you for making space for me in your world." Cale smiled. "You didn't take space," he said. "You became part of it." Later that night, as snow gently fell outside, she looked in the mirror again. Her body hadn't changed, but her heart had. For the first time in her life, she didn't wish to be smaller. She only wished others like her could feel what she felt now. Accepted, safe, home. Snow melted. The days grew longer and small green shoots pushed up through the cold soil. Winter was ending. But something else had already changed, deep inside her. The alien woman, once laughed at and left to stand alone at the auction block, now smiled more, walked with quiet strength. She didn't hide her large body anymore. She didn't walk behind Cale like a shadow. She walked beside him. One bright morning, Cale stood at the edge of the field, rubbing the back of his neck. She walked up beside him. "You look nervous." He chuckled. "I am. Why?" "I've been building something." She raised an eyebrow. "Another chair?" He smiled. "No, something smaller, but more important." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small wooden box. She stared. Inside was a ring, simple, silver, with a smooth green stone in the center. Her breath caught. "I bought you for 1 credit," Kyle said softly, "but I never saw you as property." She didn't speak. "I didn't know what I was doing that day," he continued. "I just knew that something inside me couldn't leave you there. And now, I can't imagine a day without you." He held out the box. "You are not too much, you are exactly right, so I ask, will you stay? Not because you owe me, not because I saved you, but because you choose me like I choose you." She blinked. No one had ever asked her to stay, not as a slave, not as a helper, not even as a friend. They used her, then tossed her aside. But Cale, he stood there waiting, not demanding, and she saw it. The man who gave her warmth, who built her a chair, who defended her when the world called her names, who never flinched at her size, never looked away from her scars. He didn't just see her, he loved her. Tears rolled down her face as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "I'll stay, always." Kyle smiled and slid the ring gently on her finger. It fit perfectly, just like the life they were building. She laughed through her tears. "I was sold for a single credit. And now," Cale said, "you're priceless." Days passed. Their small home grew warmer, not just with fire, but with love. Villagers visited. Children played near her without fear. She helped repair buildings, plant gardens, carry goods. People no longer stared with disgust, but with admiration. Once too large for their world, she now lifted it. One day she stood at the old auction block, the same one where no one had made an offer. But this time, she wasn't standing in chains. She stood tall, dressed in the custom clothes Cale made for her, strong, proud, beautiful. She looked at the platform, then at the crowd, and smiled, because she remembered what it felt like to be unwanted. And now she knew. Her worth had never been missing. It had only waited for someone brave enough to see it. That night, as stars filled the sky and Cale stoked the fire, she sat in her big chair holding a small piece of paper. He glanced at her. "What's that?" She smiled. "A letter, for others like me." He sat beside her. "Want to read it to me?" She cleared her throat and spoke softly. To the one who feels too big for the world. You are not the problem. The world was too small to hold you. But there is someone out there who will make space, who will see you not as too much, but as just right. Don't give up. Don't shrink. Your worth is not in the price they offer. It's in the love you find and the love you give. Kyle reached over and took her hand. The fire crackled, and in the quiet warmth of their home she knew she was no longer just someone who had worth. She was someone who had found it, and she would never lose it again.